Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome back to another StarCraft 2 replay cast. This is your host, Overmind, and today we are going to be watching our terrifying orange Terran player, ZookaMan, versus our teal Terran player, Sin. Now, it is worth noting that these are two players who know each other. Zooka is actually a gold player, while Sin is a silver player. But notably, Zooka plays Protoss, customarily, so he is off racing here, which I feel even things out a little bit more. We'll note that this is a mirror matchup. In fact, the production tab is eerily similar, with both players getting their little supply depots on up and building SCVs, which seems like a pretty reasonable thing to do. And we're going to go ahead and speed this on along just a little bit, because we all know what's coming next. I bet it's going to be Barracks, right, you guys? Barracks. Yep, Barracks going down pretty much exactly at the same time for both players. And we're going to be seeing Gas right around the same time for both players. Now, I am going to go ahead and note that Zooka has sent this nice SCV to scout out his opponent. Sin has not yet scouted. Could be that gold player instinct kicking in a little bit here. That's certainly going to help him out and show him that there's no multiple Raxes going down. There's going to be this Gas going down that he's going to scout. And he's going to leave this SCV down here so that it can take a peek into Sin's base at its leisure. More SCV production going down. And this Gas could mean a lot of things from either of these players. Could mean Reapers, could mean that there's going to be more Gas to follow up with a fast tech. Looks like Zooka's going to go ahead and go Reapers, which doesn't particularly surprise me because Zooka does like to talk about those Reaper expansions. So, possibly going to see that from him. Both players going to get their orbital commands on up here. And it looks like we have a Reaper being produced for Sin as well. Reapers are actually really, really good. But they're also quite micro-intensive, so we'll see how both players utilize these Reapers. Possibly just for scouting. Possibly going to be a little bit of sniping off SCVs, we will see. And both players going to go ahead and try to expand here. We do have an SCV that was scouting from Sin, facing a Reaper from Zooka. I think this might be First Blood. Yep, there it is. Zooka's Reaper looks like it's going to hop on up here. This command center and extra barracks for Zooka. Also a command center and an extra barracks for Sin. I'm just watching this, I'm almost afraid that they're doing this just to mess with me, see how close to exact they can be as far as building the same things, but I'm sure they wouldn't do that to me. Look, there's the factory going down for Zooka. Little bit of a difference there. I'm going to see him go up into his tech, and he's going to go ahead and scout out again. Just going to hang out in the corner of the base. He also has this SCV here, which is going to spot it as soon as Sin expands, although I'm pretty sure, yes, he's going to see this command center up here anyway. A little bit of pew-pewing going on, aimed at the mineral line. Obviously, one Reaper versus one Reaper is probably going to be pretty even. Oh, I love the death animation on that. That giant explosion as the corpse of Zooka's Reaper is flung off into the air. Alright, very good, very good. I'm excited to see what these players decide to produce with their tech. Zooka obviously getting this up quickly. Looks like he's going to go ahead and add on a reactor. Never mind, he is not going to add on a reactor. He's going to add on a tech lab. As soon as I say it, that's when it happens. Did have a scan on his base, so Sin's gonna see what's going on over here. We have Marines being produced for Zooka. We have a factory coming on up for Sin with Marines. He's also going to go ahead and get Stim, which is a pretty important upgrade if you are playing Terran. So we'll see whether this becomes an upgrade race. Obviously that's going to be pretty important if you're playing a mirror match. There's Zooka's Stim pack coming on up. Looks like Sin's going to go ahead and float out his expansion. Expanding just a bit before Zooka. So we'll see if Sin decides to take a more macro-focused approach. Zuka obviously going to go ahead and go into this tech. He's got his starport up. It has a tech lab on it. He's going to go ahead and build a Banshee. That's right. It's going to be one of those games. Do I see Cloak? Not quite yet. There it is. Ah, cloaked Banshees. Alright. Zuka is going to go ahead and expand as well. This SCV is still just sitting here. He's friends with the teal SCVs now. He's actually got a little bit of that Stockholm Syndrome going on. And, you know, every now and again he tells Zuka what's going on at this base. So that's good for him as well. We do have more barracks coming down from Sin. Looks like he's going to go possibly a slightly more bio force since he has this cluster of marines here, whereas Zuka is getting a siege tank, he's getting a Banshee with cloak, etc. So Zuka might consider moving on up into mech, whereas Sin is making lots of marines. Completely fine to make lots of marines this early in the game, but it's possible that he'll stick with bio. I actually don't... Oh, there we are. There's an engineering bay for Sin. I want to make sure Zuka has one around here somewhere. I don't see it. Let me check the structures tab. Since these bases do get a little bit busy for me, I actually don't see one for Zuka, so possible he's skipping those bio upgrades because he plans on going a bit more mech focused. Go ahead and go back to that production tab. We do see the Banshee lurking right outside the main base and coming on in. It has cloak. And picking off units. Now, the terrible thing about firing at units in a gas geyser is that sometimes they'll run into the gas geyser and then be safe. Sin's gonna take this out with a scan, losing a fairly small number of SCVs. Certainly not game ending by anyone's measure. We do have another Banshee coming on out though, and this is going to mean that this army is going to need to use a lot of scans, which could have been potential mules. It's also going to mean that the army will have to hut back and forth between the two bases to defend. Here's this Banshee. 3 kills, 4 kills, 5 kills. Oh my goodness, 6 kills. The damage. The damage. Banshee actually gonna go ahead and attack the command center. I don't know if that's the correct choice here. Probably taking off the rest of the SCVs would be more valuable, especially since this army was on the way down to intercept. Certainly did do a decent amount of damage there. Zuka realizing that he has this SCV here, but decides not to move him along. Very comfortable with it just sitting there. Loaded up medevacs moving out across the map for Sin. Could be a pretty decent drop. Zuka has been working on getting a lot of tech up. If you look in the units tab, you'll see that he has a Marauder, 10 Marines, and 2 siege tanks. Siege tanks being fairly devastating to this bio army that Sin has going on here. Are we about to see many Marines and Marauders drop? We are! And the SCVs are quickly evacuated. This refinery may yet go down. These armies are fighting each other. We do have a bit of medevac cover for Sin's army, which is going to be invaluable here as he pushes on forward into the mineral line, attacking the command center. And fortunately, this command center is going to be repaired a little bit. Sin can probably get a few shots off on these SCVs here. The siege tank and the siege up. Sin knows better than to hang around for that and heads on out. So each player poking at the other a little bit. Reaper here from Zuka, and still has that nice SCV. Now, during this time we do see Sin making some additional SCVs, but if we look at the army and worker supply, you see that the worker supply is highly in favor of Zuka. Now naturally he did kill off 6 to 8 SCVs, I believe, with his Banshees. But even without that, he's done a pretty decent job of just continuing to make SCVs, which is something that you will simply have drilled into you if you're in the Gold League. However, the army supply is slightly in favor of Sin. we will see how this game plays out. It's been pretty close as far as production. We do see an armory going down for Zooka. We have actually many barracks for both players, so it could be a mix of bio and mech. We'll see how do they decide to develop this along. Zooka gonna go ahead and take a third, which is probably a good idea. Money getting a little bit high, but that does happen. Obviously he's going to want to start saturating that base as soon as he can. Zooka has this nice Reaper here, which is going to spot Sin's third as it's coming out. It's not going to quite block the third from landing, though. So he should just get a nice look at that as it lands next to him. And we'll take a couple pot shots since it's right there. The army is going to hut on over to intercept the single Reaper. No, I'm wrong. Not gonna hut on over. Gonna stay around the front. Zooka is moving out across the map with a scary number of siege tanks. Especially given that much of this army is bio, we do have a siege tank here and a nice little bunker. That Reaper does get taken out. Oh, here's the first bit of the engagement. We can siege first. Zooka sieges first. That's going to be fairly devastating to this bio army. We see corpses flying every which way. Sin deciding to back up a little bit out of range of the siege tanks, but this bio army able to take out Sin's siege tanks. And now Sin is in trouble. Not in so much trouble that this siege tank doesn't help him out, but that third. Oh, lift the third, Sin. Lift the third. And Zooka's pretty much free to just move on in and kill this off. Do have these siege tanks moving on up. Gonna get a scan. A hit will go off on these siege tanks, but then there are going to be 4 returning fire. And I'm gonna go ahead and guess that this is probably the game at this point. Certainly both players did very well. Incredibly close game, especially in the early game. When you watched the production tab, you saw exactly a mirror match, so good job to Sin. Oh, those poor SCVs. Many deaths this day. I will say that Sin is doing a good job of continuing to build things even while under fire. I do see a lot of people who do not do nearly as good of a job as that. Did see a siege tank die as soon as it came out. Could have been very, very good for defending this. Or defending against this, rather. This base might hold out a little bit longer, but Zooka has a lot of forces that can move up at this point. Possibly wants to move those siege tanks forward a bit, since we'll probably have vision of the high ground soon, and indeed he is scooting them on up. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I can fast forward this a little bit. There's the end of the game, yes. So thank you very much to Zooka for submitting this. If you would like to see me cast your game, please submit it to NoobCrafted@gmail.com. That's NoobCrafted@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching, you guys, and have a good night.